attendees and then we'll kick off, okay? Okay, we'll actually drive off now, and if anyone joins late, they can catch up with us, okay? So thank you for joining the call today. As I said, my name is James Duffy. I work in Codec in the Microsoft practice. I'm in the enterprise cloud sales within Codec. My job is to work with Microsoft platform cloud solutions in both the public sector and private sector customers. Also on the call today, we have Matt Comerford. Matt is our modern workplace and security practice lead. Matt will be going through some technical detail which in the call around the Power Platform and Power Apps, some demonstrations as well. And we also have Damien Sullivan from Fáilte Ireland, which is one of our customers, our flagship customers in this space, in the Power App, Power Platform solutions. And Damien's going to run through some detail on what we've done there. So just to go through the agenda for today, so as I said, I'm going to kick off with an overview of Codec. I'll let you know kind of what we do in the Microsoft space. Then we're going to have Matt. As I said, he's going to go through demystify Power Apps and give you some background on the Power Platform and also a demonstration on the solution as well. We're going to have Damien then from Fáilte, who's going to go through what the case study of what we've done with Fáilte. And then I'm going to go through some innovation Kickstarter, which is basically an offering that Codec have for our customers to kind of get them up and running with the Power Platform. So I'll kick off from here. So essentially, I want to set the scene for today's call. So your digital culture. So listen, we see digital transformation is definitely not a buzzword anymore for customers. Customers are embracing the Power Platform technology to basically make their businesses more efficient. And attract staff to their business, make them operate better, and help their customers have a better experience for them. It helps them as a leading competitive edge above their clients as well. And we're really seeing this in the marketplace at the moment, that this technology is being adapted quickly. An interesting stat on the right here is more than 500 million apps are going to be created in the next 5 years. That's more than all the apps that have been created in the last 40 years. So there's a massive drive for low-code development out there using the Microsoft stack. So who are Codec? So Codec are an Irish Microsoft partner. We've been in business since 1985 and we've over 30 million revenue. We're a Microsoft award-winning partner. Those awards have been for all the work we've done in the cloud space, specifically in the Power App, content and collaboration side of things, as well as Microsoft Azure. We would have offices our main offices in Dublin. We've offices in Cork, Belfast, London and Cologne as well. Currently it's probably around there, we've about 250 plus staff now at Codec at the moment, of which I'd say about nearly 180 of those would be consultants, dedicated consultants delivering our Microsoft platform solutions to our customers. So what do we do in Codec? So we do the full suite of products. So in Codec, as I said, we're a Microsoft partner. We have many different pillars to our business. We see here down the very bottom, modern workplace and teams. So that's a big part of what we do. So Matt would lead a team of consultants who would deliver solutions in Teams and SharePoint and Power Apps. We'd also have a data and analytical arm to the business. So we would use a lot of stuff around the Microsoft Azure platform, and we'd be delivering solutions in that space. We'd also have our D365 part of the business, but everything around cloud and the Microsoft platform is delivered from Azure. Driving all of these platforms and solutions out to our customers. So we do a lot of kind of high-end projects in that space with a big team of, as I said in the previous slide, of skilled consultants delivering those solutions. And everything is backed up by managed service as well. So anything we deliver, we put in tailored managed service contracts to support those customers going forward. We're very proud to have a strong culture of people in Codec. So we attract the best staff because these consultants want to work with the most exciting big, coolest projects out there in the marketplace at the moment. And we get that from our awards that we get with Microsoft to attract those staff. So we have fantastic referenceability in this space, specifically in the Power Platform, Power App side of things. Great referenceability in the public sector and private sector, and allows our staff to be challenged and to know more and do more. So very proud of the staff we have. This is my favourite slide, I suppose. This kind of gives you a breakdown of the awards that Kodak have won. I've been mentioned in the last few slides, but as you can see, we've done the triple there, 2018-19 for Partner of the Year, Data Center Transformation Partner of the Year, and that was for our work with Microsoft Azure and moving customers into the cloud, business-changing cloud platform solutions. As you can see, just in the middle there, a number of our certifications where we're Gold, Microsoft Gold Partner, so in all of the different platforms in the Microsoft stack. You can see those there, and then listen, underpinned by everything we do, we have to have our security certifications as a Microsoft partner to deliver these solutions. And you can see our ISO accreditations on the right there. Key to today and the products we're talking about today in Demystifying Power Apps, these are some of our lead customers in that space. Heineken Ireland will be a customer of ours. We're dealing with them the last 4 years. In Heineken, we've actually empowered them to basically, they're at a stage now where they're developing their own Power Apps within Heineken Ireland. We would have gone in there 4 years ago to help the team with their consultants to teach them using Power Apps, bring it into the business, and they're now, they've a queue of about 20 different apps that are solutions that are looking to take out, move away from third parties, and actually bring them in-house and build low-code apps themselves to be more efficient, to better cost, give them more ROI, and help the business be more, work better basically. And we work with them as a partner to help them develop going forward now as well. We also do a lot of SharePoint work with them as well. DAA, Dublin Airport Authority, a really strong customer for us. We've got a great case study at the moment about the work we've done with them around Power Apps, which we can share after the call today. But what do we do with them? Again, another example of SharePoint, Teams, but Power Apps is really strong in there. We had a success story where we had them implement a 600 user shift swap Power App that was deployed in about 2 to 3 weeks, end of last year, and that's a really real success story. And on the back of that, we're doing more Power Apps with them, and we're enabling their team to develop those Power Apps themselves with our guidance, so more efficiencies. And then Fáilte Ireland, we have Damien, which is brilliant on the call today, Damien Sullivan from Fáilte, and he's going to give you more detail about the work we've done in them, specifically flagship account around Power Apps. So I'll let Damien chat about that in his slides, but another key customer for us as well. So finally, I just wanted to summarize to my end, Kodak, the main key messages are, as you can see, a power platform consultant across the full stack. All of our consultants are, work beside each other, end-to-end solutions, Microsoft full suite partner, and innovation is at the forefront of what we do. So we see the bottom there, Kodak Labs. We actually create our own accelerators and IP to complement the solutions we put into our customers. So a very strong Microsoft partner with some great referenceability, and we really hope you get a lot out of today's call. And on that note, that's me. I'm going to pass over to Matt Comerford, who is our lead in this space, and I'm going to share over to Matt now, and he'll take you from there.
Thanks very much, James.
You get that, Matt?
You can see my screen and hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, I can see and hear you okay, yeah.
Brilliant. So let me get my slideshow started here. So demystifying Power Apps. So what's the agenda for today? First, we're going to look at why Power Apps. So why it matters, why it's becoming more and more relevant for a lot of people. We're going to look at the Power Apps, and we're going to look at Power Platform. We're going to give an overview of Power Platform. So a lot of people know about Power Apps, or they hear about Power Automate or Power BI, and then some people haven't heard of Power Platform. I'll explain that a bit. It's really simple. We're going to talk about what our experience has taught us, what we've learned from working with some of our key customers, and just a couple of ways to get started, a couple of things to consider before kind of dipping your toe in the water with the technology. And then we're going to have a demo scenario. So I'm going to show a fairly simple kind of scenario based on some of the things that I discussed, and just give everybody a sense of how easy it is to get started with the platform and how well some of the integration that it offers actually works. So why Power Apps and the Power Platform, why it matters, and the purpose it serves. So to kind of continue on something that James mentioned earlier on, some numbers. So 37% of orgs are still using paper to manage critical business processes. 65% of orgs report an app development backlog. And 69% say accelerating digital innovation and transformation is the #1 reason they embrace a low-code application development. So on top of that then, which is, I think, really interesting, there's more than 500 million apps are going to be created in the next 5 years, which is more than all the apps that have been created in the last 40 years. So you can kind of see why the adoption of low-code app development is kind of starting to take hold now. And more recently, if I look at some trends heading into 2021, and this is from research by MuleSoft, the digital ready culture is a priority. So organizations are under pressure to digitize services, processes, and improve efficiency. So there's a push at the moment to really kind of focus on internal processes, make things more efficient, and go digital as much as possible, especially at the moment, given what we've all had to adapt over the last year. Democratization of innovation then. So what we're seeing is that the line of business is trying to develop digital experiences faster, but they need to be empowered and supported by IT. They also need to have the right tools to do that. And then composable enterprise. So the idea here is that in order to be more agile, leading organizations are shifting to a composable enterprise model. So what they're doing here is basically they're taking apps they already have, they're using the functionality of those applications, which is exposed by APIs, and then they're joining it all together rather than building things from scratch. So they're kind of reusing bits and pieces or cherry picking from apps that they already have. And then automation is usually always high value for a lot of our customers as well. Organizations are using automation to drive operational efficiency and improve their processes. So kind of inward focus there to kind of improve how people are working. So in summary, if we look at all that, there's still a way to go for many organizations in enhancing their digital culture. And we know as well that the business needs to work very closely with IT to deliver on any of that innovation. Many organizations, IT departments and developers are working through a development backlog where they find it difficult to strike that balance between BAU and project work. So a lot of companies have a big backlog of development, especially at the moment. What's happening is that IT is kind of focused on BAU and project work can sometimes take a bit of a back seat. But as an aside to that then, a significant volume of the developments actually relate to the line of business solutions. So they're trying to deliver solutions back into the business. Lots of organizations then are starting to embrace low to no code development as a way to innovate. And trends indicate that this is likely going to become more important as we move into next year. So there's a couple of challenges there. And really, we need to look at then how Power Apps and a Power Platform can support that journey. So the gaps that are highlighted there can be reduced or closed through the use of a low to no code toolset. The idea being that you'll empower your business users to create solutions and work directly with IT. So you'll accelerate digital transformation, again, hitting that place where you've got your business actually developing solutions, working directly with IT. And again, that term to democratize app development using the Power Platform, which are the tools they'll use. And then you'll free up IT by enabling the business to play a more active role in that development work. So the idea here is that IT, the kind of development work across all these apps is shared between IT and the business a little bit more. You kind of end up with a situation where you've got citizen developers who are part of the business, and they'll work with pro developers and IT operations to deliver solutions of varying complexity. So you have this kind of blend of project teams or skill sets from across the organization. And this is what it kind of looks like. So low code is a team sport. Between the business and the developers, you'll have your citizen developers who will participate directly in development and shorten delivery times. You'll have coders then that can do the hard parts from data integration to custom controls. So the idea being here is that if a business developer hits a blocker or comes across something they want done, but they don't really have the kind of option or the tool to do it in the platform, it can actually be extended by a pro developer then. Between developers and IT, you've got coders who will manage source control and application life cycles. And you'll have IT granting access to resources for those more advanced developers. And then the relationship between business and IT is that you'll have citizen developers actually creating, registering apps and just continuing to grow their knowledge. And then you'll have IT who will perform governance and basically give oversight and nurture that community. And that's something I'm going to talk about in a couple more slides as well. It's actually a community piece around the whole thing. So to give an overview of Power Apps and the Power Platform now, basically, it's a low-code platform. It spans Office 365, D365, and Azure, which Microsoft is sometimes referred to as their three kind of clouds. They're standalone applications, so they work independently as well. You've got Power BI for business analytics. You've got Power Apps for app development. Power Automate for workflow automation. And then the newest part of the Power Platform is Power Virtual Agents, which are basically chatbots. They can be made in Power Platform now too. Supporting all of that then along the bottom of the screen there, you'll see data connectors, AI Builder, and you'll see Common Data Service as well. So data connectors, first of all, just to give a bit of a background and a bit of an explanation. As the name suggests, this is how you connect your data into Power Apps. So when you're building on the Power Platform, you have these connectors. They basically point out to different services. So if I take like Office 365, I'll have a whole load of connectors in there for like SharePoint, for Teams, for Planner, all the apps I'd expect, connect into CRM. And it's not only Microsoft stuff either, it's a whole range of different products. AI Builder then. AI Builder is basically these kind of canned AI models that you can integrate with Power Apps. So you have things like form processing, object detection, and entity extraction. And it's fairly simple to integrate those with your solutions that you would make in Power Apps as well. And then you might have heard of Common Data Service. Now that's called Dataverse. So there's a bit of a name change there pretty recently. The idea with that is that's your storage for your apps. Now, you're not restricted to only using Dataverse. You can back into the likes of SharePoint, into SQL if you wanted to as well. But Dataverse is kind of a really, really good go-to. And as you would expect, that's basically just tables with rows and columns. So it's your storage. So that's an overview of the whole platform, and I'll look at each component in a little bit more detail. So for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, Power BI is basically a way to do analytics on your data. It's a really, really nice user interface. It's kind of drag and drop design. Very easy and straightforward to connect to multiple data sources. Plays really nicely with all that Microsoft stuff as you'd expect. And it's a really nice way to just create interactive visual reports very, very quickly. So that would be the analytics part of the Power Platform. For Power Apps then, that's where you'll focus on your application development. So the idea here is that you'll build apps for web and mobile. It works really, really well on mobile too. There's a dedicated mobile app for it. And it's fairly straightforward and easy to build these solutions. So it's a full-featured low to no code experience. And again, the target here is getting business users to solve their own problems and easily share the apps. So it's very easy to share these applications, and I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. There's also pro developer extensibility. So if there's something someone's trying to do in the platform and they just can't figure a way to do it, or there's no kind of tool already in there for them to do it, you can actually extend the platform then and have someone develop what you need. So to break it down a bit more, it's got any platform support. So this is really, really handy. In the case of like mobile apps, you can actually use the hardware. So you can use the camera, you can use the touch screen, you can use the GPS, and you can integrate them into your apps pretty easily. You can share apps like documents, so it can literally be done in 3 clicks. And for anyone that's ever used SharePoint or shared a document, it's very similar to how you do that. And there's actually a share option in there. And then seamless integration. So this is a really strong point of it too. As you'd expect, it's ready to go with like Flow, with Power BI, with Teams, with O365, D365, basically any of those Microsoft services you're already using. So to break it down more, it's like if you're in Office 365, you want to use bits and pieces from like Planner, you can integrate that into your app too. And then there's an extensibility model. As I've said, you can have pro developers extend and add things that might not be in there that you need. And a WYSIWYG design experience. For anyone that hasn't seen the term WYSIWYG before, it's just what you see is what you get. And the idea here is that it's very similar to what you would see in the likes of PowerPoint. So you have this kind of drag and drop interface. You can lay out your controls on the screen, similar to how you might lay out like a PowerPoint slide. And then you add formulas on top of those controls to add behavior to them. And there's data connectivity then, as I mentioned about connectors. There's over 250 of those at the moment. That's growing. And it's not only Microsoft services, it's any company that chooses to release a connector can do so. So you've got anything from Adobe to Zendesk in there. And then you've got that integration with the built-in data platform, aka Dataverse, or Common Data Service, you might have seen it being called as well. And then from an AppLogic point of view, it's very close to what you would do in the likes of Excel. So it kind of uses a form of that Excel formula engine that you would have seen when you use Excel. I'm not going to say it's identical. It is quite similar, so it is kind of a good starting point. And then, of course, you can leverage AI Builder in there too. Next component then, if I look at Power Automate, so Power Automate is your workflow engine. And again, that integrates with all the other stuff in that platform, all the other services across Office 365. And those 250 plus connectors also work with Flow. The idea here is you'll model business processes and do all that kind of automation stuff via Flow. So you can see on the right there in the image, it looks almost like a flow diagram. The idea there is you'll connect all your different services. So you can see it's got like Get My Profile for the Office 365 connector and Get My Manager then as well. A good kind of, I suppose, a good example to explain how this works. If you think about any processes you do in your company now, where you're getting approval for something, someone is sending an email asking for something, anything like that, that's a really good starting point for Flow because you can automate some of that. You can have it send somebody an email and, you know, catch their response, that kind of thing. And then Power Virtual Agents is the newest addition. And these are chatbots, basically. It's a kind of design surface for you to make chatbots. You can see on the image on the right, it follows that same idea of having this kind of drag and drop interface and that connectivity with all of those apps that you would expect to be able to connect to in Office 365 and Dynamics and Azure. And it works very similar to the other elements of the Power Platform. So it's pretty powerful. So if I take the three main elements of the platform, which are basically Flow, Power Apps, and Power BI, the idea here is that they work fine on their own, but they work best together. So if you think about it, Power Apps is going to be like your user interface. Microsoft Flow / Power Automate is going to be your workflow and your automation in the background. And then all the data that will be exhausted from those apps or those solutions, you can analyze it with Power BI. So it's pretty flexible and it's kind of got all your bases covered in what you might need to start building solutions. At a glance, you can start with your data, you can analyze it with Power BI, you can act on it with Power Apps, and you can automate parts of it then with Power Automate. Within Power Apps then, you have this split. There's kind of two main types of apps. There's Canvas apps, and as the name suggests, they're like a blank canvas, and they're really, really flexible. They're a really good starting point. And then you've got model-driven apps. The idea here is that you might have a process that you've got a very, very defined or complex data model already in place. Maybe it touches multiple parts of the business. You'll start with a model-driven app and actually build a solution around the data first. So to try and kind of distill all of that, this is a way that I like to look at it. You've Office 365, for example. You've got like SharePoint in there for content management, and you've got Planner in there for task management. And sitting across the top of that, you've got Power Apps, Flow / Power Automate, and Power BI. One way of thinking about it is it's like the cement between all of those different blocks. So if I'm doing something in SharePoint and I want to have something else happen in Teams or Planner as a result of that, I can make a solution then using Power Apps and Power Automate, and then I can analyze data via Power BI. So what has our experience taught us? Or some key considerations on getting Power Apps in the wider Power Platform adopted. So, like, when you're getting started, it's fine to start with a point solution as a pilot. So a lot of our customers, sometimes they'll kind of start working with us when they've already kind of gone down the road a little bit maybe. What we normally suggest is that, look, it's fine to take something, and when I say point solution, I mean it's like something very specific within your company. Maybe you're going to solve for one specific process. Do that, but do it as a pilot. Control it a little bit, control the audience of it, and start to think about governance early and treat it as a platform. So think about the fact that, like, you're going to have Power Automate, you're going to have Power Apps, you might have some Power BI usage coming along on top of that as well. How are we going to govern it? How are we going to support those solutions? What are the ground rules in place for that? Bring IT ops and the existing IT function to the table early and consider the impact to them. Plan for the developments, the release, and the support of solutions. So sometimes what we see as well is like the business might kind of race ahead and develop a solution. Then they're coming back around to IT operations and they're saying, oh, help us release this. And IT operations are kind of saying, well, you know, how are we going to support this? What's the release life cycle going to be like? How will it be updated and maintained? So get those discussions out of the way early before you start down the road, if you can. Or at least do your pilot and get those discussions underway early. And then establishing a center of excellence for IT ops and using that to onboard makers. So what's really, really handy is that you've actually a lot of resources out in the community and from Microsoft that will help you create a Power App Center of Excellence. And it gives you tools to do things like scan your environment for who's making apps, how many people are using those apps. And the idea being that like you'll have this center of excellence, you'll find makers in your company and you'll onboard them into your center of excellence so that nobody's kind of an island just out there making apps in their own way. You kind of treat it as the whole company doing it together then. And I'll give some links to resources for that at the end of the slides as well. And then iterative development and the idea of an MVP. So for anyone who hasn't seen that term before, MVP is a minimum viable product. And this is something to get comfortable with really, really early on. Because what's going to happen when you start using this stuff is like, you'll have someone in the business who will make an app, they'll make version 1 of the app, people will start using it, and then people are going to go, you know what, it would be cool if that button was orange and it did this on another screen, whatever it might be. They're going to update their app and they're going to want to do another release of it then with all this updated functionality. So the idea is to consider that really early on and get people comfortable working that way. You know, hit your 70% of functionality first, do another release to get the rest of the stuff in place. And think about that approach when you're planning your governance as well. So when you're actually doing planning for this stuff with IT in your organization, think about that fact, think about how that's going to happen and how you might need to work that into your plan around releases and stuff. And then for a toe in the water, data entry in Excel is a brilliant starting point. So you can actually take Excel data and use that as a really good starting point for an app. The idea being here that like you'll have an Excel sheet that maybe I'll explain it a little bit more in the next slide, but the reason it's such a good starting point is because you already have data that you understand really, really well. And you usually have a fairly kind of simple process around it where someone is kind of inputting into it and maybe sharing that information. So if I expand on that a bit more, I'll consider a demo scenario now where we have a business unit who are using Excel for data entry. It's a sales team, and this sales team contacts customers and they arrange follow-up calls. Usually when that Excel sheet is updated, members of the team need to let people around them know. So what they're doing at the moment is they might be going in, they're updating this Excel sheet, and then when they update it, maybe they're sending an email to somebody to say, hey, look, I added another row. Maybe they're attaching that Excel to an email and they're sending it around to a couple of people just so they can have a look or they can chip in and contribute to it as well. So something that does actually go on. So as a super simple starting point, if I go to make.powerapps.com and I'm on home, so you'll probably need to sign into your Office 365 account when you do this, you'll see start from data at the top here. So I can really easily just click Excel online, let it get things ready. So you can see here, it gives me a list of places to browse from. Now, it says file system here. That'll only work if you've set up a gateway. So try to work off even your OneDrive as a starting point. And what you're doing here is this is only going to be your own app. So you can use this as a way to kind of play around and reverse engineer what it's going to do. If I have a look, I've got a file I made earlier in here. So this is that Excel sheet. I have a table in here where the people that are making these calls to customers are kind of putting a quick note on those calls and like a date for follow-up and stuff like that. I'll show that a little bit more now in a sec. Let that do its thinking. So it's picked up table 1 in my Excel. So that's a table I've created, and I'll go connect. We can see it's getting things ready now. So what this is doing, it's looking at my Excel and it's looking at the data types and the layout, and it's going to make an app for me based on my data. So I'll just give it a second. And you can see here, it's just loading, but it's straight away. So here we go. I have my little mobile app here. It's giving me a really simple app. Got a browse screen, a details screen, and an edit screen. So one is looking for stuff. Details screen is where I'll look at the details of an individual item from the Excel or a row, and the edit screen where I can actually update the data. So bear in mind now, it's just done this for me. And if I hit, just to show that step again, if I hit play up here, I can actually use the app, the little search bar in here. You can see some of the rows from my Excel. I can click on this and I can open it up and have a look at some of the data that was entered into it. I can delete it, I can edit it here. I can even add new rows to the Excel if I want to. What's kind of cool as well is that, like, I have a date column in there and it's actually picked up that it's a date column and it's added proper date and time controls into the app for me. Now, it's not massively impressive looking by any stretch, but it's a very, very good starting point, because you can look at this and you can see, oh, you can have a look on the left here. This is basically elements within the app, and you can see some of the logic and some of the formulas in here. And it's a nice way to get started and kind of reverse engineer what's going on in some of these apps. So it's a nice starting point. And again, if you're kind of struggling with where to start, this is a good place to go. You might be able to look at your own area and say, we have an Excel and we're doing something similar to this. So when you're done and when you're ready, you can go and you can save that in here and then you can share it. But let's expand on it a little bit. Let's say I don't really want people using Excel. What could happen is that, like, someone could open that Excel. So, you know, if people on the team use my app, someone goes into the Excel and they change the date column to like a currency column or something like that. So it's not really ideal to have people just dropping in and out of the data source like that. So what I might do instead is, I think I'll go to Teams, and using the Lists app in Teams, I basically just created a list out of my Excel. And this was done through the UI in Teams. If I want to add a Lists app in Teams, I just click Add Tab up here and I can search for the Lists app. But here's my Excel. And then from the Power App side of things, I did the same thing. I started from my data, but this time I chose SharePoint. I pointed it towards my list. So if I go to my apps here, webinar demo app, very clearly labeled. I go edit. So you're going to see the same app that we had before. All I did this time was I pointed it to my SharePoint list, which was made when I created the list in Teams from that Excel table that I already had. What that's doing now is that's getting everybody away from editing or looking at anything in Excel, and it's controlling the data a little bit more, because you can't really go and change the column types or anything like that. So it's a little bit safer. So I have my same app here. Another thing I might decide to do is, okay, so my first version of this app, I had Excel. Now, I don't want to have to email anybody when I add an item to this. It would be much better if that email piece was automated. So I added a connection in here. And if I go title, test, smart, very original. See, transport, it's got 500 employees, like Teams, like CRM, like SharePoint. And I'll set a follow-up date. Let's say Monday the 30th. Okay, don't worry about those columns. And I click my tick. So you can see that's created an item in that list now. You can see it down here. If I drop back into Teams, let this refresh. You can see here's my new row added in via my app. Now what's also going to happen is in my posts here in Teams, it's going to send a message in. It's going to do that in a minute, but I'll just show you what I did in Power Automate to do that. Really, really simple. Click edit here. We just said when an item's created on SharePoint and I gave it a URL, post a message, and I chose my team and my channel. I just done a little bit of HTML, and you can see here's the fields I took out from my app. So I said, okay, you'll see it here now. There's my new contact, test customer, transport. There's all the other data I filled in. It's on my list. And I said, you know, it'd be nice to have a report on the back of this as well. So I made a Power BI report. Now, I am by no means a Power BI expert. This is very, very simple. And anyone that's on the call that knows loads about Power BI is going to slag me for this, and that's fine. But you can have a look here. And you can see now that this is pulling some data from my app. And I've got this nice kind of visual, clickable report. And everything on this report is filtering. Very simple. But just to kind of explain how these situations kind of evolve when you start using these tools, and a kind of little bit of a natural progression that somebody might follow. So look at the evolution of that app. We started with Excel, we turned it into a Canvas app, which is what I demonstrated. The next version we said, okay, I want to use a lists app in Teams rather than having anything going into Excel. So I turned my Excel into a list in Teams via the UI in Teams. And then rather than sending the emails, I created a flow that sends messages to the team automatically when an item is added. In future, I might say, well, I'd like this app to be released organization-wide, or maybe it's got more complicated data than what I showed you here today. In that case, use Dataverse. You might have on-prem SQL, you might have a data gateway, and you want to connect more data sources into it. That's the kind of thing that could happen, but this is just to show that these things kind of start to grow out over time. Now, for some useful resources, the COE Starter Kit is a brilliant resource that's explained at this link. And just to clarify for everybody, we're going to send this around to everyone, so you'll have these resources. The governance white paper here is a brilliant resource on governance. There's a Power Apps blog, which is very active, and there's a really, really good community backing all this up. Some info on licensing then. All the Office 365 plans include Power Apps and Power Automate, so you have enough to get started. The premium connectors aren't in there. And then from licensing, there's two flavors, there's per app and there's per user plans. And this is a link to the licensing guide. So that'll kind of delve into it a little bit more. So thanks for listening to my section of this, and stay tuned. We're going to learn about Fáilte Ireland's digital workplace and our innovation Kickstarter program as well. And I am going to hand back over to James. There you go, James.
That's great, Matt. Thank you very much. You can
No
hear
problem.
me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you and I can see your screen.
Brilliant. So listen, we're going to, just before I hand over to Damien in Fáilte Ireland, I forgot to mention at the start, folks, well, two things. If you have any questions, please feel free to add your questions into the box there, and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. We are running 8 minutes over, folks, so we're going to have Damien next from Fáilte Ireland, who's going to give you background on the great work we've done there in this area. So I'm going to hand over to Damien straight away, but hopefully you can stick with us if we run over by a few minutes in this webinar. Over to you, Damien.
Sure, James. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay?
All good. I can see it and hear you.
Cool, perfect. We might try and pull back a couple of those minutes here. So morning, everyone. So like James mentioned, my name is Damien Sullivan and I work in Fáilte Ireland. So today I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, I suppose, initially about how we in Fáilte Ireland have transitioned to Office 365, and then I suppose more recently how we've been using Power Apps within Fáilte Ireland, and I suppose the benefits that we've experienced from using these even over the, I suppose, short period of time that we have. So I suppose to start off, we kind of started our journey with our digital workplace with Codec back in 2018. I suppose this was soon after we had adopted our cloud first strategy. And I suppose as part of this strategy, we decided to make the move to Office 365. So just to give, I suppose, a bit of background on Fáilte Ireland, I suppose, due to the nature of the work that Fáilte Ireland do, many of our staff travel as part of their role. And I suppose this was one of the main reasons for us migrating to Office 365. I suppose one of our key requirements being that our staff would be able to access files anywhere, anytime, and on any device. And the key part was security. So I suppose when we looked at rolling out Office 365, our initial focus was on the applications like OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. And we consider these our base applications. These would be applications that we'd be using on a day-to-day basis, I suppose, to conduct our business. And once we had these applications deployed, we wanted to look at some additional applications that could add value to the organization. So we looked at Microsoft Forms, Planner, and Stream, and we've deployed these across the organization. And I suppose above all, we wanted to look at the Power Platform So from a high level, we knew what we knew what impact the Power Platform could have on the organization, and it was always something that was in the back of our minds. So as part of our digital workplace, we had a number of milestones along the way. Some of these I've just included here to give a snapshot of what we did with Codec. The first milestone we obviously had was to release Teams and to make Teams our primary communications and collaboration platform. I suppose at the time we didn't realize how important this would be, but we're now using Teams as our primary way of communicating. We use live events for organizational broadcasts. We have Teams meetings every day, Teams calls every day with our colleagues. So I think Teams and the functionality it offers our users has been a major part of the success of our own project in Fáilte Ireland. Office 365, I suppose, is very different to your traditional Office packages that would have been released over the years. So we had a significant training program rolled out by Codec across the organization. We felt that, I suppose, successful user adoption would be a major factor in our project success, and training is something we've continued to provide on a regular basis by way of refresher courses on applications or just sessions on new functionality that gets released continuously. A major piece of work that we undertook was the migration of our files from our file shares. So we in Fáilte Ireland, like I suppose many organizations, have been using file shares for the storage of our data up to quite recently, and there was a large piece of work that was required to migrate those files into Teams and SharePoint. We did this through working in conjunction with a business champions group that we set up. So this group had a representative from each division within the organization, and they were, I suppose, our main point of contact for their area, and they helped us as they had the knowledge of their own filing structure. So I think that was kind of key to getting the files across successfully and getting everything working. And I suppose one of the final milestones we had was the development of a new intranet portal. So we've built this obviously on SharePoint Online. And again, it's kind of come to the fore in the, I suppose, where we are at the moment with everyone working from home. It's the main real communications platform for the organization. So it's being used extensively. I suppose we're very lucky in Fáilte Ireland to have a really strong internal ICT team. And obviously together with Codec as our partners, we've managed to deliver a successful project that has, I suppose, really changed the way that Fáilte Ireland uses this new technology. I might get you to jump to the next slide, James, if you don't mind, please. So that's, I suppose, a kind of a brief overview of where we are in terms of our digital workplace journey. And I'm just going to, speak specifically for a couple of minutes on Power Apps themselves, and I suppose what we've been doing with Codec on Power Apps. So from the beginning, when we started our digital workplace journey, I suppose Power Apps had always been on our agenda, and we've been already engaging actually with some internal teams on some of the business processes that might be suitable for transition to Power Apps, and that had been happening, I suppose, in parallel with our rollout of OneDrive and Teams and all the other applications. I suppose like a lot of other organizations, back in March due to COVID-19, we've been working remotely as well. We were lucky because we were in such a good place that this was a relatively smooth transition for us, I suppose, because of the work that had been completed over the previous 18 months. But I suppose like other organizations, with everyone working remotely, we had our, I suppose, I won't say issues, but it does provide a couple of small issues. So we deployed our first Power App earlier this year, which was for one of our own internal ICT processes. And this process was bring your own device policy. So I suppose up to now, we didn't have this policy in place. But what this allowed for was for our staff to sign up to an ICT policy and to get relevant approvals from heads of divisions and managers, which will allow them to access ICT services using their own personal device. This worked really, really well for us. I suppose it was a kind of an eye-opener for us in Power Apps, how we could get the approvals, the workflows in place. It was really, really quickly to get done. And I suppose we could immediately see the benefits for using Power Apps then across other processes in the organization. Soon after, actually, once we got the BYOD process in place, we started working with HR on on some of their processes that they felt that they required to digitize and to bring online. I suppose, like most other organizations, when staff are working remotely, they don't have access to the same facilities regarding access to printers and scanners as if they were in the office. And this kind of, I suppose, expedited the need of Power Apps across the organization. So through working with HR, ourselves, and Codec, we started using Power Apps, and we've been able to put in some solutions to automate workflows. These have, I suppose, replaced paper-based activities that were time-consuming to manage, difficult to administer remotely, and you can see there are some screenshots of some of those forms that we created on the right-hand side of the screen. So what we have is we have a maternity leave request form, a parental leave request form, paternity leave form, and a shorter working year form. So these were all apps that were paper-based up to now. Again, working remotely brings us challenges regarding this, and these we could turn around very quickly and get everything digitized. So it was a real success. I suppose Power Apps provides a really good efficiency gain for the HR team, and also makes it much easier for staff to access and use these forms going forward. And I might get you to jump to the next slide, James, if you don't mind. So I suppose what Power Apps has allowed us to do in Fáilte Ireland, we can rapidly prototype, release, and improve mobile and desktop applications. Like I mentioned earlier, Power Apps can be turned around really, really quickly. You saw the example that Matt just did there, and I know it's obviously a simple example, but it just goes to show how quickly you can have a data source and you can create an app around it. It allows us to digitize and improve existing paper-based processes. So again, we have those paper-based processes, we can quickly get them into a Power App and get them up and running. We've been able to put a governance plan in place working with Codec to, I suppose, allow for scaling up in Power Apps. And I think, like Matt touched on it again earlier on, it's really important that we think to get the governance in place early on. For ourselves, we have different environments in place depending on the stage the app is at. So we have development, production environments. So obviously in the development, the app is available to yourself for testing and playing around with, and then obviously once we go to production, it's a live app that's used across the organization. A key requirement for us obviously is having a uniform user experience across all the solutions. We try basically to make all the apps look and feel and operate the same as much as possible. I suppose one of the things is we didn't want our users, depending on the process or depending on the app, that they had a different look and feel, which makes it confusing to use. What we've also done is we've been able to migrate and modernize legacy solutions, such as forms based on SharePoint 2010. So we had a lot of old forms on SharePoint 2010 that we've been able to migrate into Power Apps. It obviously allowed us to adapt quickly to a changing work environment presented obviously by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm just going to talk briefly about our innovation program. So I suppose what our innovation program is, it's the next step in our digital workplace initiative, and that's to empower users within our organization to be able to actually deliver Power Apps solutions themselves directly. So we're doing this through an innovation program that Codec are delivering for us. So what we have is, at the moment, we have 12 business users taking part in this program. And as part of this program, they get to learn about the Power Platform. So all the things that Matt touched on earlier on. So we cover an app in a day session. We do then further sessions around the requirements gathering, ideation, solutioning, and then at the end we do a 2-day hackathon where we look at creating some of the apps that the users have come up with ideas for. I suppose it really gets the users involved and gets them to see what's possible through using Power Apps. The main purpose of this program is to empower these users to be citizen developers. As kind of was mentioned earlier on, Power Apps really is low code, no code. So you don't really need that developer background to be able to work through Power Apps. And basically these users then can learn how to build Power Apps for themselves. Again, the users, they become, I suppose, more aware of the process around app creation. And more importantly, I think that they see the possibilities of what they can achieve. So even, I suppose, even with more complex applications, even if the users themselves aren't going to be building, I suppose they can come to the table, they can sit down with ourselves and Codec, and I suppose they're aware of the process and they're more aware of the possibilities, I suppose, as we engage to maybe get an app built. So I suppose just to round off, I suppose since the introduction of Office 365 and more recently Power Apps in Fáilte Ireland, I suppose we as an organisation have become more aware of the possibilities around building applications and easily automating processes by using these new tools at our disposal. We're still early in our journey with Power Apps. There's a lot more we have to learn and want to learn, but it's obviously something that we really want to build on, and we're really excited to learn more about and further develop into the future. So I hope that was of some benefit to you, and thanks very much.
Damien, thank you very much. That was fantastic. We're really delighted you could join the call today. And I think, listen, there's nothing better than a real life example of how this technology works, and also about the approach the Codec have taken with Fáilte. So it's a great slides. Thanks for that, Damien. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, James.
Folks, I'm just going to kick on here, folks. Just going to keep moving now because I'm conscious we ran over. So listen, I've just got two more pieces just to quickly go over. So as Damien mentioned there, we're using the Innovation Kickstarter program with themselves to help them develop apps within the business and have that citizen developer approach. So this slide here just gives you an overview of an offer we have at the moment. I need to call out, this is based in the enterprise space for kind of high number of users. We can we have one-to-one offerings where we can speak to people after today's webinar to get your exact requirements, and we can certainly tailor these workshop design ideas to your business. But this is just to give you an idea of the offer we have at the moment. It's a packaged offer, so it's an app in a day. So you have our consultants, BAs, and Matt's team, some consultants, architects in this space, the development space, to go in and work with your IT staff and business users, understand how you work. We have a one-day Centre of Excellence workshop, learn about governance of the Power Platform. Then we do a two-day ideation and design workshop, which empowers users to design the solutions. And then you can actually create a list of solutions specific to your business that need addressing basically with an app. Then we do a two-day hackathon, and this basically supports that design, and we build a proof of concept. Again, for your business, a proof of concept for apps that work within your business at a design workshop. After that, we choose 3 apps or 3 prototypes after those workshops, and we actually build those prototypes, and we look at the return on investment for your business. So that's a 3-day consultancy-based approach with Matt and the team and your users. And included in that bundle as well is a 3-month Power App licensing model. So that licensing for you to use, there's a number of licenses include, now it's over 100 licenses in this instance, but that's for the enterprise space. But it allows you to use, you're fully licensed, not to worry about that for 3 months, and you can actually use these apps. And listen, the idea is that after those 3 months, you hold on to those apps and bring them into the business, and you see the benefits and the return on investment in them. But as I said, on the next slide here, what we're happy to do after today's webinar with Matt, myself, other members of the team, we can do a discovery call with your business as a starting point to understand your specific needs to your business. We know everyone's different, okay? But I think it's something you should really avail of, because as you've heard from Fáilte and other reference sites, it's the technology is front and center at the moment. And that's it, folks. We're just finished up now. I'm just checking on any questions here. I can't see any questions there at the moment. Sinead has just dropped into the chat there. She's put in the request for the discovery. So if anyone wants to follow up on that one-to-one discovery with your business, the link is in the chat there. We will also be sending on an email after today's call with Matt's useful tips in his presentation for you, and some more detail about kind of the one-to-ones and so many offers we have at the moment with Codec. And listen, we really hope that you've enjoyed today. If anyone's any questions, as I said, give me a shout, respond to those emails. And I want to personally thank Damien again from Fáilte for helping us today. Really appreciate that. And I want to thank Matt as well for a fantastic presentation on his side, the technical side of it. And I hope we've demystified Power Apps for you today, and you get a lot of takeaways from our session. Thank you very much. Have a good day.